It's just you and me now, baby, just us.
I never thought the day I became a mother would also be the day I felt the sharpest sting of betrayal. Most women picture holding their newborn close, surrounded by family who celebrates the new life with love and care. But my story didn't unfold that way. My story began with tears of joy quickly drowned out by tears of despair. I had just given birth to my baby boy, Daniel. He was tiny, wrapped in a soft hospital blanket, and every sound he made felt like a miracle. But behind my joy, there was exhaustion. Labor had been long, and my body ached in ways I never knew were possible. The only thing keeping me steady was the thought that I had my parents with me, that maybe, just maybe, they would finally step up, even if just this once. Growing up, I had always been the invisible one. My parents favored my older brother, Michael. He was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. I was the one expected to endure, to bend, to accept that love was conditional in our household. I thought maybe the birth of my child would soften their hearts. Maybe becoming grandparents would awaken some sense of compassion. But life has a cruel way of reminding you who people truly are. The hospital released me quicker than I felt ready. They said everything was fine with Daniel and me, and I could go home to recover. My body disagreed, but hospitals aren't built for sentiment. My parents had promised they would drive me home since I couldn't manage on my own. My car had broken down 2 weeks before, and I hadn't had the money to repair it yet. They said it wasn't a problem, that they'd help. When the nurse wheeled me out with Daniel in my arms, my parents were waiting by their car. For a brief moment, I felt a spark of hope. Maybe they really had changed. Maybe this was a turning point. I walked slowly toward the car, still weak, carrying my newborn, only to see something that made my stomach twist. Their trunk and back seat were overflowing, with shopping bags, old boxes, even garbage bags stuffed with clothes and who knows what. There wasn't a single clear spot where I or my baby could sit safely. "Mom," I whispered, trying to hide the panic rising in my chest. "Where am I supposed to sit with the baby?" My father didn't even look at me. He just slammed the trunk closed and said, "You'll manage. We don't have time to rearrange all this." My mother laughed. She actually laughed, as if my concern for my newborn safety was nothing but a silly joke. "You've always been dramatic. It's just a short ride." But it wasn't a short ride. Home was 40 minutes away, and the hospital parking lot suddenly felt like the loneliest place in the world. I tried to reason with them. "Please, I just gave birth. He's so small, he needs a car seat, and I can't hold him in the front seat. This isn't safe." My father's expression hardened. "You're always complaining. We came here, didn't we? You think the world revolves around you because you had a baby? We've got other things to do." I felt the blood drain from my face. My mother crossed her arms and smirked. "If you want everything perfect, maybe you should have thought of that before getting pregnant. We're not your servants." I stood there, clutching Daniel tighter, unable to believe the cruelty spilling from their mouths. These were my parents, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. And yet, here I was, a new mother, shaking from exhaustion, pleading for help, and they couldn't even clear a seat for their own grandchild. Then came the moment that broke me. My father got in the driver's seat. My mother walked around, opened the passenger door, and before she got in, she looked at me one last time. Her eyes scanned me, sweaty, tired, holding a crying newborn, and she let out a laugh. A cold, bitter laugh. "There's no room for trash," she said, her words slicing deeper than any knife. And then, with the engine roaring to life, they drove off. I stood there in the hospital parking lot, trembling. The car's taillights grew smaller and smaller until they vanished completely. My parents had abandoned me and my newborn son. I wanted to scream. I wanted to collapse. But Daniel stirred in my arms, his tiny face scrunching as if he sensed my despair. His needs were immediate and pure, and they pulled me back from the edge. Tears blurred my vision as I whispered to him, "It's just you and me now, baby. Just us." The cold air bit at my skin. My arms ached from holding him, my stitches throbbed, and every step felt like dragging chains. But I had to find a way. My phone was in my bag, but the battery was nearly dead. I sat down on a bench near the parking lot entrance, rocking Daniel gently, trying to think. The irony was suffocating. My parents' car was packed with garbage, but they had no room for me. Their daughter who had just given life to a new member of their family. They chose trash over us. And that truth cut so deep it made me nauseous. I looked down at Daniel, his tiny fist curled, his breathing soft. He was so innocent, untouched by the cruelty of the world. I made a silent promise then. He would never feel the way I felt in that moment. He would never know what it was like to be discarded by the people who should love you most. But how was I going to keep that promise? How could I provide for him when I couldn't even get home from the hospital? The questions swirled in my head as I tried to steady my breathing. Every car that passed felt like a reminder of how stuck I was, stranded with a baby in my arms and nowhere to turn. Yet even in that moment of despair, something inside me shifted. A spark of anger, of determination. If my parents could leave me here to fend for myself, then I would do just that. Not for me, but for Daniel. Because he deserved a mother who would fight for him no matter what. That was the moment I decided I would never beg for their help again. I sat there on that cold bench, cradling Daniel against my chest as the hospital's automatic doors opened and closed in the distance. Nurses bustled past, visitors came and went, cars pulled in and out of the lot. Life moved on around me. Yet I felt frozen, trapped in a moment I didn't ask for, abandoned by the very people who were supposed to be my safety net. I pulled my phone out of my bag, the screen glowing faintly with only 7% battery left. My hand shook as I scrolled through my contacts. Who could I call? Friends? I had distanced myself from most of them during pregnancy, too ashamed of my struggles, too exhausted to keep up appearances. My brother? Forget it. Michael hadn't even visited me in the hospital. To him, I was just the family embarrassment, the sister who never measured up, who made bad choices. I considered calling my parents again, but the thought made bile rise in my throat. I could still hear my mother's voice echoing, "There's no room for trash." That sentence wasn't just about the car. It was about me. Daniel stirred, letting out a small cry that quickly grew louder. His tiny lungs filled the quiet night with a sound that pierced straight through me. I rocked him gently, whispering, "Sure, it's okay, I'm here." But inside, I was panicking. I had no diapers with me, no extra formula, nothing except the hospital blanket he was wrapped in. I dialed the only person I thought might answer, my friend Jessica. She and I hadn't spoken much recently, but she had always been kind, always understanding. The phone rang twice before her sleepy voice came through. "Hello." "Jess," I whispered, my voice cracking. "It's me. I just got discharged. I'm outside the hospital with Daniel. My parents left me here. I don't know what to do." There was a long pause, then the sound of her sitting up quickly. "Wait, what? They left you? With the baby? You're kidding. I wish I was." My throat tightened. Could you maybe come get me?" Without hesitation, she said, "Of course. Send me the exact spot you're in. I'll be there as fast as I can." Relief washed over me, warm and fragile, like a flicker of light in a tunnel. I sent her my location, praying my phone wouldn't die before she arrived. Then I clutched Daniel closer, rocking him, humming softly to calm both of us. Minutes crawled by like hours. Each sound of an engine made me look up, hoping it was Jessica. My arms ached, my back throbbed, and my stitches screamed with every slight movement. But I held on. Finally, headlights swung into the lot, and Jessica's small blue car pulled up. She jumped out before the engine had fully quieted, rushing toward me with wide eyes. "Oh my God," she breathed, crouching beside me. "You look like you're about to collapse." I forced a weak smile. "I probably am." She carefully helped me stand, supporting my elbow while I clutched Daniel tightly. "Let's get you home," she said firmly, guiding me toward her car. For the first time in hours, I felt like someone cared. As she drove, I told her everything. How my parents had refused to clear a seat, how they laughed, how they called me trash. Jessica shook her head in disbelief, anger flashing in her eyes. "They don't deserve to be in your life," she said. "But you and that baby, you're going to be okay. You've got me and we'll figure it out." Her words were a lifeline. yet a part of me still ached. No matter how cruel my parents had been, a small voice inside kept asking, why wasn't I enough? Why couldn't they love me? When we reached my apartment, Jessica insisted on carrying Daniel while I shuffled slowly inside. The place was small, just a one-bedroom walk-up with peeling paint and thin walls, but it was mine. And tonight, it was the only safe space left for me and my baby. Jessica stayed for a while, helping me settle Daniel into the makeshift crib I had prepared weeks earlier. She heated some soup for me, filled my fridge with groceries she'd picked up, and made sure my phone was charging. You need rest, she said gently. I'll check on you tomorrow, okay? And don't you dare apologize for calling me. That's what friends are for. After she left, silence filled the room. I sat by Daniel's crib, watching him sleep. His tiny chest rose and fell. His little mouth opened and closed as if he were dreaming. I should have felt peace. Instead, memories crashed into me. Memories of being 12 years old, standing in the rain outside school, waiting for my parents to pick me up, only to realize hours later they had forgotten. Memories of birthdays where the only attention went to Michael, while I got whatever leftovers were around. Memories of being told I was a burden, a mistake, someone they had to put up with. And now, even with my own child in my arms, the cycle continued. They had abandoned me at the moment I needed them most. But as the night wore on, another thought settled deep in my bones. Maybe this was the end of the cycle. Maybe their cruelty was a twisted kind of gift, a final push that would force me to break free once and for all. I leaned over Daniel's crib, brushing my fingers against his tiny hand. He grasped my finger instinctively, holding on with surprising strength. Tears filled my eyes as I whispered, "You'll never feel unwanted, baby. Not as long as I'm alive. I'll give you everything I never had." That promise became my anchor. Over the next few weeks, exhaustion became my constant companion. Daniel woke up crying every 2 hours, my body was slow to heal, and the bills piled up faster than I could keep track of. But I kept going. I had no choice. I applied for freelance work, taking small writing gigs online whenever Daniel napped. The pay was meager, but it was something. Jessica visited often, bringing meals and encouragement, reminding me I wasn't as alone as I felt. And yet, every so often, I would see my parents' faces in my mind. Their laughter, their car pulling away, the words "no room for trash." Those memories burned like acid. But instead of crushing me, they fueled me. They pushed me to work harder, to prove, not to them, but to myself, that I was more than what they said I was. Because the truth was, they didn't define me anymore. My son did. Still, I knew deep down that this wasn't the last I'd hear from them. People like my parents, they don't stay quiet forever. And when they came back into my life, I had to be ready. It was 3 months later when my phone lit up with a number I hadn't seen in weeks, my mother's. For a moment, I froze. Part of me wanted to let it ring, to send it straight to voicemail. But curiosity and maybe a flicker of old pain made me answer. "Hello," I said cautiously. Her voice was sugar-coated, almost theatrical. "Sweetheart, we've been meaning to check in on you. How's the baby?" I laughed bitterly. "Now you care? After leaving me stranded at the hospital?" She sighed, as if I were the one being difficult. "We were just overwhelmed that day. You know how your father is. We didn't mean anything by it." I clenched the phone so tight my knuckles whitened. "You called me trash. You left me with a newborn in a parking lot." Her tone hardened. "Don't be so dramatic. Anyway, we were thinking we'd love to come visit Daniel. We're his grandparents, after all." And there it was. Not guilt. Not remorse. Possession. They didn't want me. They wanted access to the child they had abandoned. I swallowed hard. You don't get to pick and choose when you're family. Daniel deserves love, not people who treat him like garbage. There was silence on the other end. Then my father's voice cut in, sharp and dismissive. "If you think you can keep our grandson from us, you're mistaken. Blood is blood." "No," I said firmly, my voice shaking but steady. "Love is what matters, and you've shown me exactly how much you're capable of." I hung up before they could reply. My hands trembled, but I felt lighter, freer. For the first time, I realized I had the power to choose who had a place in my son's life. The weeks that followed were hard, but filled with small victories. Daniel started smiling, his little eyes lighting up whenever I walked into the room. My freelance work picked up, one client referred me to another, and slowly, money began trickling in. It wasn't much, but it was enough to cover rent and groceries. Jessica remained my rock, helping me whenever exhaustion threatened to overwhelm me. Sometimes she'd hold Daniel so I could shower or nap. Other times she'd sit with me late at night, listening as I poured out my fears. "Do you realize how strong you are?" she said one evening, as Daniel cooed in her lap. "Most people would have crumbled. But you're building a life for him out of nothing. That's incredible." I wanted to believe her. But strength doesn't always feel like strength when you're living it. It feels like survival. Still, her words planted a seed of pride inside me. 2 months later, my parents showed up unannounced. I heard the knock on my door, opened it cautiously, and there they stood, dressed neatly, smiles plastered on their faces as though nothing had happened. "Surprise," my mother chirped, holding a brightly wrapped box. "We brought gifts for the baby." I blocked the doorway with my body. "What are you doing here?" "We just want to see our grandson," my father said smoothly. "It's time to put the past behind us." The audacity made me laugh. "The past? You mean when you abandoned me at the hospital? When you laughed at me, called me trash, and drove off while I stood there with a newborn?" My mother's smile faltered, but she quickly recovered. "Oh, we didn't mean it. We were under stress. Families fight, but blood ties are forever." I shook my head. "Not this time. Not for me. And certainly not for Daniel." Her eyes narrowed. "So you're really going to keep him from us? Do you know how selfish that is?" I felt something ignite inside me. Anger, yes, but also clarity. For years, I had begged for their approval, swallowed their insults, tried to earn their love. But now, looking at Daniel's tiny crib behind me, I knew better. "What's selfish," I said, my voice steady, "is abandoning your daughter when she needs you most, and then showing up months later pretending nothing happened. What's selfish is thinking you can hurt me and still claim a place in my child's life. I won't let him grow up believing cruelty is love." My father scoffed, muttering something under his breath, but I didn't care anymore. I closed the door, locked it, and leaned against it, my heart pounding. Daniel stirred in his crib, letting out a soft whimper, and I rushed to him, scooping him into my arms. As I held him close, I whispered, "It's just us, baby." And that's enough. That night, as Daniel slept soundly, I sat by the window with my laptop open. I thought about everything, being stranded in that parking lot, the humiliation, the abandonment. But instead of drowning in it, I began to write. I wrote about toxic families, about breaking cycles, about the courage it takes to walk away from people who refuse to love you right. I poured every wound, every scar, every moment of strength into words. And when I finished, I realized something. My story could help others. There were countless people out there who had been discarded by their families, made to feel like trash. Maybe if they heard my story, they would find the courage to choose themselves, too. So I kept writing. Slowly, my words found an audience. People commented, messaged, and thanked me for sharing what they couldn't put into words themselves. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building something. Months turned into a year. Daniel grew, babbling his first words, taking his first steps across the worn carpet of our apartment. Every milestone was a reminder we were making it. Not because of my parents, but in spite of them. On his first birthday, I threw a small party with Jessica and a few kind neighbors. There were balloons, a homemade cake, and laughter, the kind that didn't sting, the kind that filled the room with warmth. As I watched Daniel smash frosting into his tiny fists, I felt tears prick my eyes. This was family, not the one I was born into, but the one I was building. And for the first time, I didn't care that my parents weren't there. In fact, I was grateful. Their absence was proof of the boundaries I had created, the cycle I had broken. Because the truth is, family isn't defined by blood. It's defined by love, respect, and presence. And while my parents had chosen trash over me, I had chosen something far greater. I had chosen my son. I had chosen myself, and together we were enough.